Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 21 of Xbox 2 plus 1. Although this week it's Xbox 2 plus 1 minus 1, because unfortunately, Randall419, my typical co host, is still incapacitated with the old vid, the old co of the vids. And Rand's on the mend gradually, but his voice is still messed up and he's still coughing a lot, which isn't conducive to podcasting professionalism. And we all know Xbox 2 is all about professionalism. Anyways, speaking of professionalism, I have a very professional guest this week. Probably the most professional guest we've ever had on Xbox 2 plus 1. And that is the heroic, the illustrious, the epic Miles Dompier. And if I had this professional soundboard, I'd play some sort of applause here. But yes, hello, Miles. It's been a while.
Damn, bro, what an intro. Getting me all hyped up, making me sound like a big deal. I gotta say, when I accepted this invite, I wasn't expecting so much math to be involved. There's there's a formula now for this podcast.
Yeah.
Man, I'm excited to be here. It's been a long time. People who know you and know our history know we've worked together at Windows Central for a long time. We've been on podcasts together a bunch, but it's been a really long time, so I'm excited to sit down and chat with you, man. A lot has happened in the last year, almost a year now.
Been a year. I mean, but for people that don't know, Miles used to work with me on Windows Central, writing about games. But then he made the leap across, which a lot of games journalists and content creators secretly dream of, and that is leaping all the way over to becoming a game developer himself. Tell us a bit about that, Miles. How did all that come around? And who are you working with? Who the hell are you working for?
I've made the jump. It's funny because I still have people hit me up like, hey, Miles, when are you going to write an article about this? Or why won't you write an article about this? And then I say, well, I'm kind of busy now working on games. And so for people who don't know, last June-ish, I started the interview process for Illfonic. We're an indie dev and a publisher. And I accepted the job formally in August and started on August 28th. So I think, depending on when you're listening to this, it'll be 1 year. My 1 year anniversary at Illfonic is tomorrow if you're watching live. And yeah, so it's been a really cool experience. The last, I was in games media for, I want to say 5-6 years, writing, covering games. Before that, before doing it professionally, I was doing it independently on my own, making videos, writing about games, going to events and covering the industry. And so that gave me a lot of opportunities to talk to people about what they like about their day-to-day. And for me, as a creative, I always knew I wanted to be more directly involved with the process of bringing games to players. And I was trying to figure out what that meant for me as someone with, a creative interest. And so, yeah, I started talking to teams and started looking at, a small pool of quote unquote dream teams that I wanted to work for. And that came down to, the games that they make, do they align with my interests and what I would actually want to play? And so Illfonic was on my small list. I want to say there was probably 3 to 5 teams I actively applied for that I was looking at, and was stoked to get the call back. And then I went through a 4-round month-long interview process. It was kind of a gauntlet. There's a lot of competition, and then I formally got the offer. And since then, I'm a social media coordinator over at Illfonic, but we're a really small, tight-knit team, so that's given me a lot of opportunities to get in, learn things like Unreal, work on trailers. I got to make a map reveal trailer for Killer Clowns from Outer Space, the game, in addition to a bunch of other really cool opportunities. I got to work directly with the creators of Killer Clowns from Outer Space, the movie. I'm now an honorary Kyoto bro. I got to wear an official Killer Clowns suit at PAX East this past year. So it's,
I think
it's been
I
a lot.
The pictures of that. That rings a bell.
Yeah, it's been really cool. It's been a great opportunity and something that I had been working towards for a long time, really. So it was wild. It was surreal. It was, everything I hoped it would be, to be honest, so far.
That's awesome, man. I'm like super stoked for you, and that was able to go all through. And it's kind of weird because, I think a lot of people get into games media at the end of the day because they love video games, but they can't make video games. You know? I know. At least speaking for myself, I feel like that's true of myself. You know, I'd love to be able to make video games and stuff like that, but this is like the next best thing I think for me. So to see you make the leap across is absolutely awesome. You know, like tell us a little bit about Killer Clowns from Outer Space, because I know, like, for people who know Miles from like back in the Windows Central days, you were our horror guy. We don't have a horror guy anymore, which kind of sucks actually. But Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Now, I'd never heard of this franchise until the game came around. But this is a storied horror franchise, right? Killer Clowns from Outer Space. So give us some background.
This whole saga is wild, and I don't necessarily believe in fate or any of that kind of spiritual stuff, but Killer Clowns from Outer Space was probably the very first horror movie that I ever watched. I was 5 or 6 years old, and I distinctly remember my dad introducing me to Killer Clowns from Outer Space, and it was terrifying.
Some great parenting, man.
If you watch it now, it's very cheesy, but as a kid, that movie's terrifying. It's giant alien clowns that are cocooning humans in cotton candy to suck the juices out of them. It's surrealist. It's wild. If you haven't seen the movie, watch it. It still holds up because the practical effects are incredible, and they really commit to the bit of what would alien killer clowns do? Oh, they'd use balloon dogs that hunt humans down, and they would use cotton candy ray guns, and they would make their babies from popcorn. It's complete and total nonsense. But that is the movie that I guess created my love of horror, and since then I've just been chasing that my entire life. And so it was first announced that Killer Clowns from Outer Space, the game, was a thing when I was working at Windows Central. So, as you know, I was like, oh, we got to cover this. Oh, bro, we got to cover this. So I did the announce post, and I was stoked. I was so damn stoked. And at this time, Illfonic wasn't involved with the project when it was first announced. TerraVision Games was working on it. I was still stoked. And so as I'm going through the interview process, my manager, Mike, who is also a huge horror fan, knows I'm a big horror fan. And so he starts teasing me. He's like, yeah, you're a big 80s horror guy, right? And I'm like, oh, yeah, absolutely. And he's like, okay, good. You're going to have your work cut out for you here. And I was like, uh-huh. And then pretty much the week I started, we announced that we're going to be co-developing and publishing Killer Clowns from Outer Space, the game. So that was pretty much onboarding what I jumped right into. And that has been the first game that I shipped. So it was the first horror movie that I ever watched, and it ended up being the first full game I shipped in my dev career.
That's so awesome, man. Like, what the game's it's an asymmetrical multiplayer game, right? How does the game play exactly?
So if you're unfamiliar with Illfonic, we've done a lot of games in the asymmetrical genre. I don't want to say maybe pioneered's a little too bold, but a lot of people love Friday the 13th. And we were the developer of Friday the 13th, which kind of, alongside Dead by Daylight, popularized the asym horror genre and immersing yourself in a horror movie experience. And so that's the pitch of Killer Clowns from Outer Space. The game is you have 3 killer clowns, 3 players who are killer clowns, and you have 7 players who are humans who are trying to escape. And as I just mentioned, all the clowns have ridiculous weapons. Cotton candy ray guns, so you literally cocoon a human in cotton candy, and you can pick up that cocoon, you can throw it around the map, and you hang them on these little lackey generators, which spawn little lackey minions that wander the map and grab other humans. If a human's hiding, you can use your balloon dog to hunt, and they'll basically sniff out the humans. And then on the other side, one of my favorite things about this game compared to like Dead by Daylight or Friday the 13th or Texas Chainsaw Massacre is, as the human, you can kill the clowns. Because if you've seen the movie, and sorry for the spoilers here, they have one Achilles heel, and that's their nose. You can pop their nose, their big red nose, and you can kill them.
That's a pretty obvious target.
Yeah. It feels very much like a video game staple. Oh, hit the big red thing. Hit the big red thing. Yeah. That's its weak point. And that's essentially what the gameplay loop is. You have 7 humans wandering the map looking for spark plugs and other objects to like turn on the boat, activate a bunker to get out of the map. Meanwhile, the clowns are trying to kill and cocoon all the humans before the clown apocalypse goes off, which is this big cotton candy nuke, essentially. Yeah, so it's chaos. It's really silly. It's a lot of fun, especially if you've played stuff like Friday the 13th and really connected with that. This is very much, in a lot of ways, a spiritual successor to that idea where you are the star of a horror movie. Whether you're the clown or the victim, you got to kind of create your own little mini horror movie in 15-ish minutes.
That's awesome. I need to try it out. I haven't given it a go yet. I am aware of the game. I need to give it a go sometime. But yeah, man.
Yeah, let's really get some rounds in. Yeah, I gotta harass you and Rand, and we'll get some rounds in.
Yeah, I think on the next Xbox 2, the proper show, we'll have some gameplay footage so you guys can check it out in a bit more of a long form kind of way. But this is generally speaking, when we do these kind of shows, it's usually with a content creator, and you are a content creator, of course. But this is the first time I've actually done Xbox 2+1 with a game developer and stuff like that. And I suppose there are things you can and can't talk about now. Like before we talk, have quite prolific conversations about the industry and stuff like that. So this time maybe a bit more general and nuanced about it. But I think I don't think it would be remiss to suggest, and you've been in the weeds now for a year. The industry's had quite a bit of turmoil and turnover in the last year. What's that been like? Looking at it from your perspective on the inside, because we see it on the outside with the tweets saying oh, we've had to lay some people off, all that stuff with Bungie recently, for example, and then Activision had layoffs earlier in the year. What's that been like? Have you experienced much of that on your end and within your circles?
Yeah, so I'll preface pretty much everything I say moving forward with these opinions are just mine and don't reflect Illfonic. The spiel here. Yeah, but anyone who's followed my career knows that I've been a big advocate for people when it comes to, people who work in the media side, people who work in game dev, because over the last several years we've seen a lot of, as you said, turmoil. There's been a lot of instability for a lot of teams, and that's not conducive to creating. If your mind is distracted by whether or not you're going to have a job tomorrow, it's hard to be in a state to create great pieces of entertainment. And we've seen a lot of big teams, I don't want to say dangle the carrot, but essentially make promises they can't keep. And they make these promises knowing they can't keep them to try to churn and burn employees into just delivering hey, we need you. If we can do this, if you can hit this deadline, if you can hit this feature, whatever, everything's going to be okay. And in some cases, especially as we look at big AAA games, sometimes those guarantees are really, they're not there because there's so much competition in the space right now. And I think the conversations now really need to start bringing in the nuance of a healthy balance for teams. And when players ask for features and when players ask for content and players ask for support, obviously when we all think about what does this mean for me? What do I get out of the deal? And we want these pipelines of endless content. And sometimes we don't want to pay for that content, and we just want that. We want more and more because somebody else did it. Fortnite is a prime example of a machine that can turn out a lot of content. But Fortnite, that team at one point was well over 1,000 people, 1,500 people.
I think that's still a lot.
Yeah, and that's a lot of people working full time on Fortnite. That's more than most game dev studios have total. So, yeah, but that crazy. Still gets used as the expectation for a team of 100.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of publishers, a lot of developers just need to have honest conversations about what they can do, what they want to do, and how that fits in with what the players want from an experience. Because not every team can do it all every time, but we still have people trying to do that. And then you have situations where games don't land with an audience. They don't meet the financial expectations. And we're not giving any team room to fail, which is horrifying. Like not every game is going to hit, and that doesn't mean the team's awful or the team's untalented or some of the rhetoric that gets thrown around. But because they take 6, 7, 8 years, there is no second chance. That's it. Like, that didn't hit. Sorry. Good luck to you. Find something else. And that's unfortunate. That really sucks to see as a dev. And that's why, I don't want to speak too much for Illfonic, but something I've been very grateful for about our team is that a lot of the decisions that we make are very transparent. We're very tight knit. And I feel like the decisions we make are good for our players, and they're also good for our stability. So despite all the turmoil going on in the industry, I'm not working with this fear of like, oh, maybe I won't be around. Like, and that is essential to good creative content, I feel like.
I mean, I couldn't help but think of Concord while you were mentioning that, because Concord is like a pretty prolific example of a game that took a long time to make. And, if you look at the Steam stats, it's not doing so hot. Although there is some indication that it's performing better on PlayStation itself. But on Steam, like, people often use Steam stats as a benchmark for how well games are faring and stuff like that. And I noticed you were calling out people on Twitter for console warring and celebrating potentially and stuff like that. And I completely agree with that, by the way. I think like
it's one thing I will say now that I'm on the dev side is it really is a bummer when people use any release because of exclusivity to weaponize the console wars, because then you have a bunch of team members essentially that are the casualties. That's very dramatic of this back and forth, and so people on one
as well.
Yeah, people want a game to fail. People wanted Redfall to fail because of an exclusive, and those sort of extremes are usually just amplified by that kind of us versus them mentality. So it's a bummer to see people, because it's something that gets used a lot now. Much like Metacritic, people take a screenshot of concurrent players on Steam, and that's the metric of a game's success. Is what And I feel like it's okay for people to move on, and it's okay for people to come back to games, and not every game needs to be the cultural zeitgeist and have 50,000 concurrent players to be a bop or a flop, as it were. I feel like there's a little more nuance to be had there when it comes to like the performance of a game.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that always struck me specifically, and I think we talked about this before, but it's The Long Dark, Like if you like The Long Dark, for example, is a game that has very little DLC. It's on Steam. It's got an all-time peak of 14,000 players, and it's got a 24-hour peak of 2,000 players as of writing. And that single game has managed to sustain that studio for years and years and years and years somehow. And I don't know if it's like a product of like having a very affordable game to make, or a healthy dev culture, and and a sort of a very dedicated but small player base and stuff like that. Do you think the industry will move further in the direction of making games that maybe don't cost $500 million to make? Is that how? Because like one of the, I suppose, conflicts right now, you've got consumers who often feel like $70 games are too expensive. And you've got developers who are like, AAA developers who are like, well, developing a $500 million game in California, that's incredibly expensive. And the risk factor is just insane now. And then you've also got, like you said, people who want infinite content forever, So what do you from your perspective, not Illfonic's, of course, it's purely Miles' perspective. But do you think the industry will move further towards more affordable games, or will we see more microtransactions instead to, offset costs? Like, what do you think's the path forward for the industry?
I hope the path forward is more smaller games that don't cost as much to make and don't take as long to make, so you have chances to iterate we see it a lot in the indie space where a team has a really great idea. They can iterate on that idea fairly quickly and get it out in a relatively short period of time. And it doesn't cost a ton of money. It might not be the most gorgeous or most polished experience, but we're seeing so many examples of people connecting, resonating with those games, and just having fun. Pal World is a prime example. That game launched in a very, very early access state and found a huge audience. And it wasn't like a transformative game visually. It wasn't like smashing Elden Ring visuals or anything like that, but people still connected and resonated with that game. That game relatively was still pretty expensive in the grand scheme of things, but still there's a lot of opportunities for teams to, and I'm talking teams of any scale, Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo. And I think Nintendo of the big three, at least from the offset, seems to be, I don't want to say the smartest because that's maybe not the right word, but the most conservative with their game dev budgets, while also having huge performance gains on the titles they release. So not only are they not spending as much as their competition, they're selling a lot of copies. So they're focusing on creating an experience that's fun and catches on, and not fixating on whether or not this is the best looking game of all time or if it has every single feature that's ever been in any open world ever, which is a big, I think there's a lot of conversations happening where people look at an open world game and say, okay, well, this game did this, and this, so we have to do all of those things plus add a new hook to it.
Yeah.
And it's that's a lot. That is a lot to bite off where you could focus on something smaller. And that being said, when we look at that approach, I hope that also means we're looking at price points. We're factoring in price points. Because not every game needs to be $60 or $70. I want to see games that are $30, $40. Like, I think we should start normalizing that. And part of the psychology, in my opinion, of the $60 price tag for every game is that players are going to feel that if a game isn't $60, that it's not worth their time.
Well, they think it's on sale or something, and it's no longer
they'll think it's not of the same caliber or quality of a $60 game. And that's not necessarily the case. I think it comes down to scale. I think scale is a big part of how we should factor in these prices. So I really hope, for the sake of a lot of teams, that we get some breathing room with these smaller titles that take 18 months, 2 years, and get some of those out the door, as opposed to every game being a 6-year, $100 to $300 million endeavor.
I feel that. I totally feel that. One thing that did strike me during Gamescom this week, they announced a standalone. What do they call them now? A sort of a standalone, not a sequel. There's a cool word for it. I can't remember what it is.
Oh, are you talking about the Dying Light?
Yeah, the Dying Light. Expandalone, I think they call it now. Like standalone, but expansion. And an expansion that's standalone, expandalone. I've seen people call it that.
Expandalone. Oh, yeah.
I've seen people call it that, expandalone. So, like, the Dying Light 2, The Beast, I think it's called.
The Beast.
I think it's called that.
I think you're right.
Standalone expansion for Dying Light 2. And they've built it as a sort of cheaper 20, I think they said 15 to 20 hour experience, and a sort of on a smaller scale, using the assets and existing stuff from Dying Light 2 rather than rebuilding a whole ass game. If you got the engine and the assets, you might as well. Do you think we'll see more stuff like that? I suppose Gears of War Hivebusters is also an example of that, maybe, potentially. And I really liked Hivebusters. I don't know how well it performed for Xbox, though.
Hivebusters ruled. That Hivebusters was amazing, and I thought it was, in some ways, better than some of the biggest moments of the main campaign. So I fully support people reusing assets in animations, etc. I know that's been a hotly debated point of contention on social media. Oh my God, God of War Ragnarok reused animations. Lazy devs, dude.
They never played a FromSoft game or a Monster Hunter.
No, FromSoft was getting that heat too. I saw people looking at Elden Ring and saying, "Oh, dude, they're just using animations from Dark Souls, man. What the hell?" And it's, if you have a perfectly good animation for getting into a boat that looks good and runs well, do we do we truly care if the animation is the same, or is that just bad faith argument to try to downplay a game? And that's why I think there is opportunity for people to reuse assets, reuse animations. I'll give you one of the most iconic examples of all time, Majora's Mask. The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask is essentially a asset flipped Ocarina of Time, and I absolutely love it. I love it more than Ocarina of Time. That game absolutely rules.
That game terrified me, dude. When I was a little kid and Link puts the mask on and he's screaming, I'm like, what the?
That game is it's Zelda fever dream. They took weird. Ocarina of Time and said, you know what, that wasn't scary enough. That wasn't. We need it darker. We need it weirder. And so, obviously, Twitter didn't exist back when Ocarina of Time hit. But if it did, people would be on Twitter doing side-by-side comparisons of the animations of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, and it's. Come on now. I see Melted Chameleon in the chat says Halo 3 ODST in New Vegas reused a ton of assets and are almost universally beloved.
But yes. I remember when those games came out, dude. New Vegas was not beloved when it launched, and neither was Halo 3 ODST. I remember these things. They're loved now. New Vegas especially was slammed for being buggy, and people did complain about things like the asset flips and all that stuff. I remember people complaining about asset flips in Fallout 3. And I was just like, oh, this is reskinned Oblivion, But I think that it kind of comes back to what you're saying about Nintendo in general, where, like, if you do focus on the experience, those sort of negative people, they will filter out, and then what you're left with is a passionate fan base. And now the New Vegas fan base, oh boy, they are a passionate bunch of people.
Oh yeah. They're every single day I go on Twitter, there's a viral tweet. It's like, bring back Fallout Vegas. 10,000 likes.
It's like a meme in Fallout communities on the subreddits and stuff, where it's like all the different Fallout communities, like Fallout 4, 76, and the TV show. They're like happily discussing Fallout, and then like an NCR Ranger comes up and it's like, hey, you should play Fallout New Vegas, and they're like, thumbs up, Oh man, it's a whole thing. But you're completely right. I think there's a point where an asset flip can be almost cynical, I suppose. But like Monster Hunter has been getting away with it for decades now, and I did think it was funny when I didn't even and if it's done right, you might not even notice. I mean, obviously, like a Rathalos in Monster Hunter, it's going to be a Rathalos in every single bloody game, with like maybe a couple of new little quirks or twists. But like, so I didn't even notice this, but someone pointed out to me. I think it was my brother actually. He said, the Erd Tree avatars in Elden Ring that chill around the minor Erd trees and stuff? That's the Asylum Demon from Dark Souls 1. It's the same raid,
I've seen those, side-by-side comparisons for that.
And I was like, what? And I was like, oh yeah.
Most people wouldn't notice.
Yeah, you don't notice, like, because, it's a completely different context. It's been a long-ass time since I fought an Asylum Demon. And and when I come up against an Erd Tree avatar, it does have some different moves, but it was like, this actually is an Asylum Demon, just a woody tree-ish kind of one. But I do think you're right that like costs have to come down across the board, and people have to, I think, potentially check their expectations to some degree, because. And I don't know what your opinions or thoughts on this is. I don't know, like, your perspective as an independent indie dev might be a little bit different to like a mega publisher. Microsoft's out here talking about 500 million active users now in their ecosystem. But Banana Peel Jack says Rathalos twerk. Yeah, that's why I almost said Rathalos twerk.
Let's see it. Let's see that mod.
Like. One thing, like, Xbox execs were telling me in LA, and did you get out to LA for Summer Game Fest this year? Did you get out there?
No, I didn't this year.
Yeah, right. We'll have to hook up if you get there next year. But when I was out in Summer Game Fest, like, one of the things like Xbox execs were saying to me was gaming hours have declined year over year in total across the industry, and gaming spend has declined year over year across the industry, and and I definitely think I see that as a media publisher as well. People are spending less time on websites and stuff like that. in comparison to the pandemic, of course, when everyone was stuck at home. And then you've also got like new forms of entertainment have risen and changed user behavior, like TikTok. A lot of people just scroll on TikTok or Instagram Reels algorithm now rather than actually actively play a game. So there's like a lot of constraints there that I think the industry's kind of grappling with in some ways right now. Do you get like analyses on your end about any of this stuff? I mean, some of this is probably confidential. I don't know, but like, are there any sort of like
exactly
wider behavioral trends you see that concern devs right now?
Because we definitely look at us with me being on the social side. We definitely look at how people are engaging with content, not just games, but videos, and there's been a huge shift, especially with younger audience when it comes to how they engage with a video game. And there's a lot of data that shows that, like you mentioned, there are a huge number of people who will watch a game and engage with a game video clip on a platform like TikTok.
Yeah,
that will never ever consider playing that game. Will never ever.
My cousin watched Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on YouTube, the whole thing, and I'm not sure she'll actually ever play the game. But she watched the whole game on YouTube. Do you think that's that's a problem?
I mean, there are people who get that satisfaction through just watching it, and it's maybe a game you're passive. It's kind of like listening to a podcast while you work out. I know people who literally watch gameplay let's plays while they work out, and they get that itch that way for a game that maybe they don't have time for or weren't going to check out. Do I think that's a problem? No. It's hard to say how people want to engage with content is a problem. I think we just all need to, I don't want to say just embrace it, but maybe think about those sort of things when you're developing a game.
Right.
Thinking about like how an audience outside of us having these conversations on these podcasts, we've probably been playing games for a while, and we have a way that we expect to play games. We have platforms, consoles, etc., that we expect to feel and perform a certain way. And a lot of that's changing. A lot of it's changing very rapidly. And I think a lot of these big publishers are trying to come to terms with that and satisfy us, satisfy the core, but also cater to a younger audience that maybe doesn't resonate with the way the core players engage with games. And it's tough.
iPad kids.
Exactly. Like I see, at events, people walk up and touch the monitor, and they're like, "Oh, this isn't a touchscreen? What?" I'm like,
Yes.
They got a keyboard and a controller, and they're like, ugh. And for me, playing a game on an iPad screen or a touch screen, ew, that's disgusting.
It's awful.
There's no, it's just, it feels so alien. But you have people who grew up that way. That's the format. That's the form factor that they're used to playing games on.
Yeah.
And so they don't look at the console or the PC necessarily and go, that's where I want to be. They just want to be somewhere that's the most convenient and play something that's digestible. I'm afraid that publishers might take the wrong message from those sort of things and overcorrect. But I think we can strike a good balance of giving us the big experiences that we want, but also experimenting and trying to come up with ways to have more, I don't want to say viral games, but that's kind of been what's taken off the most in recent years is the viral. I'm going to use the word gimmick, but that's mean spirited. It's not really, I don't mean it to be negative, but those are the games that resonate with those audiences that aren't
that has a unique selling point,
players.
A unique hook.
Yeah, that hook that just drives it.
Like a wrestling gimmick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
not saying it's negative in that.
Imagine the Undertaker if he didn't come out of a coffin or have a trench coat. Like, what's that?
Yeah,
it's
just Mark Calloway.
That.
What? I think it was called Mean Mark Calloway. I think in his first gimmick or something like that. Which is a hell of a lot less cool than the Undertaker.
The Undertaker. Yeah, I mean I always
think about like
hype, dude.
Yeah, like Among Us, Vampire Survivors, those kind of games. Like Vampire Survivors, like that game must have been pretty damn cheap to make. I would imagine.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
compare that to the budget of like a Halo Infinite or something, and
Oh yeah,
the amount of money that game has generated, like the profit percentage of Vampire Survivors versus Halo Infinite's probably astronomical.
Definitely. I do wonder how Halo Infinite's performed over time, but at least at the outset, you know. I mean,
it seems like it has a pretty strong. Halo Infinite seems like it has a pretty strong dedicated player base as of now. Like not huge. It's not doing Overwatch 2 numbers, which are pretty massive. But it seems like, despite some of the criticisms of the game, that people are getting into Forge, playing the user-generated content, and kind of building that community within the game, which is cool. I think that's what a lot of people were hoping for from the launch of that one.
Yeah. I mean, on the topic of Halo and all this other stuff, and I know we can't get too deep into platforms and stuff, but you are aware of all the controversy surrounding Xbox right now, at least within the core community. Because I'd say within the core community, because I'm convinced 95% of people don't care or aren't even aware of like the multi-platform stuff. But you've been tracking some of this stuff, right? Like,
yes, I'm very up to speed. You know, I'm not covering the games industry, but I am following the games industry very closely. And I'm not afraid to say it, that I mostly play on Xbox. Xbox is my primary platform. I've said that publicly before. It's still true. I mean, I have a PC, I have a PlayStation, I have a Switch, but my main console, if I'm picking one, is Xbox. And I think that's perfectly healthy and okay to say.
I'm the same way. Like, I'm playing mostly on PC right now because of World of Warcraft, but like most of my variety gaming is done on my Xbox Series X. But like, you know, in that context, oh, go on. Were you gonna say something?
And so all I was gonna add was, so yeah, I'm definitely in tune with the recent developments regarding platform exclusivity, exclusive games, the console experience. Is the console going to be around, Jez? I've definitely been following all of that.
I want to know, like, what do you think about all this? What do you think about the multi-platform stuff? And you know, and again, your opinion, not Illfonic's. But like, what is your what is your opinion on this as an Xbox consumer, customer, player, investor in essence? Because like, if you're buying games on Xbox, you're an investor in the platform, and you're invested in the platform. And it's why like it bugs me when some game journalists and other content creators are like, oh, people are too invested in their platform. And it's like, well, yeah, I've spent like thousands of fucking dollars on this fucking platform. I've got like a Elite controller, I've got thousands of games or hundreds of games. I bought DLC, I got save files that are tied to Xbox. So yeah, I'm invested in the future of the platform. Just speaking for myself here. And like, I understand why some people get so mad about it, but like, what do you think about it? What do you think as a consumer and customer about what Microsoft's doing right now with Xbox?
It's been fascinating, and I've talked about this for a while when it comes to exclusive games. And I think for a lot of us, it comes down to what we know of the console experience, how we've been treated with the console experience in the past. And Jeff Grubb put this pretty beautifully the other day on social media when he said that console users are used to being treated special. And I think there's a lot of fanfare. We have strong connections to those times where we've bought a new machine. We had the launch lineup of games. We have the fond memories. Xbox 360 for a lot of us, like there's a lot of positive sentiment tied to that piece of hardware, the exclusive games, Microsoft's output. But when you actually do a side-by-side comparison of Microsoft's output now versus 360, their output now is significantly higher. They have a much bigger slate of games coming from Xbox Game Studios and their first-party games. But they're also simultaneously shifting the expectation for console players. We've seen games not launch at 60 FPS on console, which has upset players. We've seen, the Towerborn situation where that's coming to early access first on Steam. And so there's I understand why people are upset. Because I always talk about the financial realities of gaming, and video games are expensive. I really, it's not something I will ever say, oh, we'll just get a different hobby if you can't afford it. Some people want to play video games. They only buy one console, and maybe that console is Xbox. So if you are someone who only has an Xbox, you don't have a PC, I can see some of these moves being frustrating. I can see some of these moves making you not feel special as a platform holder. But I'll go back to an earlier point that I had when it comes to making decisions that are right for the teams. Because as much as I am, and I hate this word, a consumer, there is the other side, the employment realities and the expectations, because Microsoft has spent a lot of money in recent years, or Xbox specifically has spent a lot of money. And that money comes with a great deal of responsibility and pressure. And so if you have an example like Sea of Thieves, which was out for years, and that gets brought to PlayStation, and that does, according to folks like yourself, well over 1 million copies. So you're doing well over 1 million copies of a game that's already been out. That's a huge amount of revenue for Rare. And then Rare theoretically can use that to fund future support for Sea of Thieves. They can use that to fund their next project. And I think it's important for these teams to have those healthy revenue streams coming in just for their own stability. And so I'm conflicted because selfishly, I want the premier elite experience on console, because I'm a console heathen. I'm going down with the ship. I don't think consoles will be around forever, but I will be riding that ship until they have sunk. Okay, just to make that clear, like I'm a console heathen. I have a very decent gaming PC, and I will almost always play on Xbox, even if it looks and performs worse. Okay, that's just for context for everyone here. That being said, everyone's feeling the pressure of exclusives. And everyone, as we've talked about, is messaging that games are more and more expensive and the spend is down. And so if you are only releasing a game to a relatively smaller audience on one platform, there's a couple realities that I firmly believe. First, no matter what the price point is, there's a huge percentage, and this isn't just anecdotal, this is a reality. There's a huge percentage of people who will literally never pay that. They'll never pay that entry. And that's why they've been pushing things like Xbox Game Pass on TVs and whatever device you have, because Microsoft understands that no matter what they get their price point to for their console, there's a huge percentage of people who will never buy that. And then secondly, generally speaking, if you put your game more places, there's more opportunities for word of mouth to spread. There's more opportunities for people to buy the game, and there's more opportunities to create brand loyalty for your franchises and IP. So
brand loyalty.
We're going to see, I think, generally less and less exclusives, just because of those realities. And if teams do want exclusives, they're going to get more and more expensive. And so you're going to have pressure on your PlayStations, your Xboxes of the world to drop huge money that they maybe don't want to spend to get the exclusive rights, because they know the devs know the cost of doing an exclusive. And when a dev makes the decision to do an exclusive, I want to feel that is the best decision for the game, the quality of the game, and the stability of the team. And so sometimes that's the business reality of making an exclusive deal. But that being said, I'm curious when we're going to start seeing those walls drop, because we've already had Lego Horizon. Not only is that coming to Switch, but that's a PlayStation game that was featured in a Nintendo Direct just today. So people, a couple years ago when I was saying, oh yeah, PlayStation's going to start releasing games on PC day and date, people were screaming up and down, no, they'll never do that. That'll never happen. The same thing that, when Xbox started doing that, there were people who just wouldn't believe it. And so not only is PlayStation doing that, but they are bringing their games to other consoles, the Nintendo Switch. So if it makes financial sense, they're going to do it because they're a business, and sometimes that doesn't make us feel very special, Jess.
Well, Woggerman in the chat makes a good point, He says 2030, are there even exclusives anymore? And you sort of alluded to this idea that the walls will come down in some form or the other. And he says, oh no, sorry, this was Nerds and Other Legends. I wanted to get this first. I'll come to you in a second, Woggerman. But he said, I'd separate the controversy of a multi-platform strategy and the controversy of the erosion of Xbox of the hardware brand. For me, the two things are not the same. One bothers me less than the other. So, like, for some people, like, for me, and this is true for me, for example, I don't care about exclusives. It doesn't make me feel special if Halo is on Xbox, partially because I don't care about Halo and don't play Halo, but also because if Halo's on PlayStation, it's not going to make me feel any less special. I don't personally, I'm not really bothered about the box as much. What I am bothered about, though, is this idea that if you don't have those exclusives, but PlayStation does, fewer people buy an Xbox, and fewer people buy an Xbox, then we get fewer devs making games for Xbox, and we get fewer devs making games for Xbox, then that means, the platform starts to sort of, I don't know, implode in a sense. And, like, some people, again, are crying out about Capcom Fighting Game Collection Volume 2, which was announced today, exclusively not for Xbox. And by the way, you guys...
You'll love to hear it.
Yeah, exclusively not for Xbox. And I will say to you guys listening to this that my sources indicate that there is work being done to solve this particular issue with Capcom. And it is a pipeline thing and a tech thing. And there is work being done to make that happen. But, like, it could very well easily have been believable even that it wasn't a tech issue. And maybe it was just a case of, and I'm sure, like, if Xbox had the install base that PlayStation does, I think Capcom would have invested more to make sure those games simultaneously launched across all the platforms. So I think even if it is a tech issue, I do think, like, there is an issue where the size of the platform makes Xbox a lower priority for some devs. Now, do you, you say you think, like, it's a good thing for multi-platform games to exist and all that kind of stuff, but is there not a danger that it could erode the viability of Xbox as a dev platform and thus a consumer platform in general? Is there a future where we lose our access to our games and it all becomes orphaned and we have to forcibly start from scratch? Yeah, I think that's what some people extrapolate all this going to. Because, like, my Windows phone, they didn't port any of the apps that I bought to Android. I just lost all that shit,
Oof. R.I.P. R.I.P. to the GOAT, dude.
Yeah. Or my $1 apps. But yeah, I spent maybe like $30 on the Windows Phone store. I spent thousands of bucks on the Microsoft platform on Xbox. So, well, like, I can accept Windows Phone dying. I would be mad as hell if they stopped making Xbox hardware. Do you think that's a risk, or do you think? This is the argument Microsoft will make. I'll tell you now, is that it doesn't matter. They will tell you that no, people don't switch platform, and they'll also tell you they've got more console players than ever. That's what they tell investors. But what do you think?
I definitely hear that concern, and I think if you are someone who has invested a lot of time and resources and energy and money, you don't want to hear a possible timeline where that just goes away. One thing I will kind of push back on with that is that, and again, anything's possible. That's something I've been talking about in this industry for years. Never say never, because just, good Lord, as we've seen over the last few years, anything can happen. But with Microsoft spending as much money as they have on gaming in recent years, it would be very odd for them to essentially self-destruct all of that revenue. And they understand that they need to have a compelling platform when it comes to hardware and software and games. And they've been investing in that pipeline in huge ways we have never seen before. So I do understand that we look at some games and we look at some publishers, and there are publishers and teams who don't have the resources to bring a game to Xbox, and Xbox, because of its install base, maybe, again, this, I'm not speaking for any other devs, but maybe it is the lowest priority for them. Like, they want to get the Switch out first, they want to get PlayStation next, they want to get PC out, and then Xbox, like, if they have the time and resources, or if there is like a big uptick in the game, then they'll do the Xbox version. If you're on Xbox, you don't want to hear that. Like, you don't want to hear that the Xbox is a low priority. And the onus is on Xbox to make the platform a priority. And I think, despite some of the omissions, we have seen notable changes with that. We have the Mana series. Visions of Mana is coming to Xbox for the very first time. Atelier just was announced. The new Atelier is coming to Xbox. That franchise is coming to platform for the very first time. Shin Megami Tensei is back. So there are notable examples of franchises and publishers working with Xbox who were not working with Xbox a few years ago. And I think with things like Call of Duty, those momentum shifts where we have big tentpole franchises, there is a lot of opportunity to kind of reinvigorate their install base. And they've already, I think, those concerns, they tried to get ahead of them when they came out very early and talked about their new hardware. When people like Phil Spencer tease a handheld, when Sarah Bond comes out and says the new hardware is going to be the most advanced technological leap ever, you know, we don't know what that means. Does it mean anything really, or is it just marketing? But that being said, they want to make sure that people understand that they are investing in that. And I want to believe that's the reality. I don't want to, you know, I don't want to believe that that Xbox is just going to pull out of gaming after all of this. Again, I'm not saying it's impossible, because who knows anymore. But I find it hard to believe that that's going to be the pipeline, especially given the recent energy from the last Xbox showcase we've had and the one before that. The public perception of the Xbox brand outside of, you know, the core space is positive, because they have a lot of games coming. And as we've seen with PlayStation and Nintendo, that's going to be what people are talking about long after, not a platform decision. But right now there is confusion on what is the Xbox platform. If you're someone who doesn't, if you're not already invested, what is that? And I think that's what they need to answer very clearly when it comes to their approach to exclusive games, their approach to bringing games to other platforms. Like, the Switch, one of the main reasons the Switch was a runaway success was the price point was low, and it introduced a completely new way to play video games. Before Switch, we didn't have that hybrid format, and that completely changed how people want to engage with games. And we've seen Steam chase after that. We've seen Republic of Gamers chase after that. Chances are PlayStation and Xbox are going to chase after that. So I'm hoping Xbox is having those conversations internally about, what does that look like for us? When we drop our next machine, our next device, what is that hook that makes it so when you're using this device, it is an experience unlike the competition? And I feel like bigger resolution in FPS is cool, but is that enough anymore?
And it also makes games more expensive. Like, the PS5 Pro is going to drop soon, and it's like, okay, do we have to like pack even more polygons into models now when we can barely afford to do the 4K? I suppose, like, you know, hitting 60 frames is probably the goal here, but not. But anyways, man, we've hit an hour. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit some questions from the chat, and then I'm going to get you on out of here and back to work. Whoosh. We're working on some clownage.
Yeah, we got one thing I'll shout out for the Xbox fam here is that we we published Predator Hunting Ground. Actually, sorry, PlayStation published Predator Hunting Grounds as a PlayStation exclusive a while back. Earlier this year, we announced that we're the publisher, so we are bringing Predator Hunting Grounds to Xbox this year. So, stoked about that. I mean, I own it on PlayStation, but I'm stoked to dive back in on Xbox. So, yeah, we got some cool stuff coming.
That's awesome, man. That's cool to hear. Well, we'll definitely be covering that. And also, you know, you guys can check out Killer Clowns from Outer Space on Xbox and other platforms as well, Steam and PlayStation. And is it on Switch too? What else?
No, PS5, Xbox Series, and Steam.
Steam, cool. But yes, indeed. Let's grab a few questions from the chat. I want to grab this one first from Nerds and Other Legends, because you might know the answer to this. He said, I might be misremembering this, but didn't Zombie U on the Wii U start out as a concept for Killer Clowns from Outer Space back in the day? Did you ever hear that? I never heard that.
I saw that message in chat. I had never heard that. That would be a wild story, but I had not heard that one before.
That's really interesting. We got this one from Woggerman. Do you think the state of the industry is affecting what gets put into the game? And are devs playing it safe in order to get as many players as possible? That's quite a broad question, but do you have like any thoughts on that? Like, are games becoming homogenous while for trend chasing? I suppose like in the context of Concord, 8 years ago, Concord might have been quite original, but I don't know. Not now.
It's tough because, yeah, things change so rapidly and people's expectations for games also shift with that. So obviously Concord started gestating after Overwatch because that was a huge hit. People were having a lot of fun with that. People wanted to create their own spin on that. And I think that's novel and that's totally fine. But I think personally I worry about checklist design. Like when you're saying, all right, we're going to make a hero shooter. We need the Mercy archetype. We need the Reaper archetype. We need whatever. And they're just hitting like a checklist. Does the game have this? Does the game have this? As opposed to saying, what is the fun loop that we're chasing? What's our hook to this game's design? And I think we do see that, especially when it comes to very big games, because it is scary and risky to ship a big game. And as I touched on earlier, there's not really a guarantee anymore. Stuff on paper that seemed like it would be a hit has come out and to little or no fanfare. So it's, yeah, you do want to make sure you're checking those boxes just for the sake of that investment, but it's also kind of unfortunate when that becomes the design philosophy of an entire game.
Yeah, I feel you on the checklist stuff. I mean, I'm kind of like, I'm about to play Star Wars Outlaws this week, I think. Record some footage for, Xbox 2. And Ubisoft, I feel like he's often a victim of this checklist kind of mentality, but I feel that completely. It's a weird industry because it's like you say, you can spend millions and millions of dollars and do all these focus groups and this feedback testing and all this kind of stuff. And then like a game like Vampire Survivors will just sort of saunter in and just blow the F up. Or like, Among Us. Among Us is always a great example for innovation. I suppose there's no substitute for true creativity. I remember Flappy Bird. Do you remember Flappy Bird? Remember Flappy Bird?
Oh yeah, Flappy Bird. Yeah. Oh my God.
I remember back in the day, like people writing articles like the fact that Windows Phone doesn't have Flappy Bird is exactly why it's gonna die. And then like a bunch of Windows Phone devs quickly put together various
rip-offs. We need to get
this
out now. Yeah, we need this right now.
The Windows Phone dev community was so awesome. They would every time a major app blew up on another platform, they would hack together a version for Windows Phone users. There was a hack to Instagram, there was a hacked Snapchat. Someone was even working on a hacked Pokemon Go. I have no idea how they were pulling that off, but they were reverse.
Come on, guys, we're not going to be left out.
They were
Windows Phone forever.
Yeah. They were reverse engineering the app and port sniffing the locations of the Pokemon from their closed API and stuff. It's crazy, man. The stuff that they were trying to do to keep this platform alive. But here's another.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
I was just saying, I was talking to the devs of Who's Your Daddy at PAX East, And I don't know if you've played that. It's
Haven't.
such a good dumb game. It's basically there's a baby running around the house trying to kill itself. There's like you can climb in the oven. There's like a lawnmower. There's all these sharp, dangerous things
Oh
that
my
babies
god.
shouldn't be around. So one player's the baby trying to kill itself, and everyone else is a dad scrambling to stop the baby from hurting itself. It's a really goofy, silly physics game. The graphics are, very basic, very, very basic. But it has online multiplayer, and that game has like blown up, and it continues to be very big on the Xbox platform and PC. And it's like I think it started out as $5, and maybe they've increased the price a little bit. But I was talking to them about how well that game just continues to perform, and that's a prime example of that game is in the premise first, 100%. Like all the other details, the graphics, the fidelity, the frame rate, those things were not the primary consideration for the design of the game. It was pitch first, which is there's a baby that wants to die and there's dads trying to stop it. And that's the hook. And that hook is so strong that people are ignoring everything else about the game's weird jankiness and just having fun. And I think it was really great to talk to that team about just how consistent that game performs.
That's
And
really
just month
cool.
over month, it is still selling because people are like, "What? What?" They hear about the game for the first time, and they want to check out that concept.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I think it's like I had a similar conversation with the devs of Long Dark on that front. Game has never been super massive, but it just keeps ticking on over, man. Here's another question from Woggerman who says, by 2030, I was going to say, that's many, many years away. In 2030, are there any exclusives anymore? Are we playing on a box of our choosing and the devs are making one version, most likely PC, that runs on every box and purchased directly from different storefronts? Do you think do you think the industry's heading in that direction where it's less about the hardware and more about the storefront, like PC basically?
I think we're moving in that direction. It's hard to say if there will be like a unified front. Because one thing I think about is like streaming, movie streaming, and the way we engage with movies and music. The idea that once you had to buy a dedicated player to access movies is so silly by today's standards.
Yeah.
Nobody would ever do that. Like trying to tell someone they need to buy this $500 machine to watch this movie. No way. There's no way on earth that's happening. And so I think a lot of platform holders, for better or worse, probably want a world where that's, they're everywhere. They want to be everywhere, and there's just people can access their games wherever they want. And I think as a player, it would be great to be able to access your libraries on whatever device you have and have it be a good experience. And I think, there's a road to get there when it comes to performance with things like cloud and just the hardware specifications. But I think that benefits us generally a bit more than having to buy a dedicated machine to play a game. But I don't know. 2030 seems optimistic for that timeline.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to get there.
Oh, Miles?
Oh, did you? I'm here.
Oh, I cut out for a second there. I thought, was my PC crashing? Am I disconnected? No, we're good. We're good, I think. But yeah.
Okay, what's the last thing I said? What I cut out?
No, I think that was it on the last bit.
Okay.
I agree on all those points. It kind of dovetailed nicely into what William Riggs was saying. Like, if a game goes multiplayer, I think you should only have to pay once and then play it on all platforms. I mean, I love that idea. Microsoft has the Xbox Play Anywhere platform, but publishers, a lot of publishers do track users that double dip. Like, for example, I double dipped on Diablo. Prolifically double dipped on Diablo.
I triple dipped on Diablo 3.
Yeah, exactly. Like I bought Diablo. I think I triple dipped on Diablo 3 as well because I bought it on Switch 2 as well.
Yep. Same.
So like that's like some devs would be like, I can imagine publishers like EA and stuff being like, nah, we want people to double dip, frankly, and also we want maybe different price points for different kinds of machines and stuff like that. But Microsoft definitely feels like, we'd like people to buy once, play anywhere, but because it benefits them, it's a unique selling point for their their platform. I do wonder if like the next Xbox, if it does have Steam on it and it's more PC like, I kind of feel like my conspiracy theory is that when Sarah Bond was talking about their forwards compatibility games preservation team they talked about that earlier in the year. My conspiracy theory is that that's like a big initiative to work with publishers to get our Xbox libraries working on PC. Because I think like if anyone can line up those APIs into Windows, it's probably Xbox and Microsoft. And then it's just a case of convincing publishers like Illfonic to play ball. But I guess
yeah, I mean that would be
theory.
awesome. You know, that would be the dream, really, to have a device where you can access your entire existing library of Xbox things and then pull up, I don't know, any PC release.
Yeah.
And with Windows, it seems like that wouldn't be too weird of a timeline for us to live in.
Yeah, I hope so. And we're gonna drop one more question now, and this is your opinions on the hardware, because Dave Ramos says, given the Xbox Series S is priced at $300 USD, curious what the Gen 10 handheld and console would be priced. So like my theory right now, and this is informed speculation, like I've been hearing rumors. I could be wrong, because these are rumors, but my informed speculation speculates to me that speculatively. And notice I'm emphasizing a certain word here, speculatively. The next Xbox, speculatively. The next Xbox platform will consist of a replacement for the Xbox Series X and a handheld Xbox. That's my belief right now. Not enough to put a report together, but there won't be a replacement for the Series S, or the handheld would be the replacement for the Series S. Speaking as an Xbox fan and consumer. Not Dev Miles, but consumer Miles. I know you hate that word, but consumer Miles.
Consumer Miles.
Does consumer Miles? Does an Xbox handheld interest you? And if so, at what price point? And then, if you buy the handheld, which presumably would be less powerful than the desktop version under the TV console, would you buy both, or would you just buy one of them?
All right. So, speaking as consumer Miles, Xbox, you better be working on a handheld. I swear to God, no. No, I would be really excited about that, because as we've seen, there is a market for handhelds. We have the Steam Deck, ROG Ally, there's Asus. A lot of people are getting into the space. And Xbox, considering their push into cloud, considering their push into you playing the games, where you want, when you want, it really seems like, I don't want to say a no-brainer, because it's expensive and it takes time and resources to iterate and develop hardware, blah, blah, blah. I get it. I empathize there. But as consumer Miles, what I want to see from the strategy is they obviously use the Series S as a low price point to get new players into the Xbox ecosystem. And that worked. Despite some of the stuff we're seeing on console sales, a lot of new players to the Xbox ecosystem were onboarded through the price point of the Series S. So that was effective. You have maintained a lot of the hardcore through the Xbox Series X. So just do a premium console, an upgrade to the Series X, and then make the Series S offering the hybrid, the handheld that you can dock. Sell a separate dock if you need to keep the price point low, but that thing needs to be $400. It can't be over $400. Because you don't want to completely alienate an audience of people that would maybe buy a lower end SKU. Because if you have a premium Xbox, and let's say the premium Xbox goes up to, I don't know, $600, whatever they end up doing, who knows, man. We're gonna have the PS5 Pro, and if that's $600, I'm not gonna be surprised. So let's say Xbox says, all right, our next console is $600 for the premium one. We know you're alienating people. People are not going to pay $600. So the handheld is going to need to be the cost-effective entry. And I imagine the Switch successor is going to do it. I don't imagine the Switch successor is going to be $500-$600. And I imagine they're going to be smart with that tech, and they're going to have games that can run at 60 on the Switch successor. So whatever that tech is, hopefully Microsoft is factoring into their design. But if I'm speaking on what I want to see, and what I think would be the smart play, $600 and $400 for a premium machine and a handheld.
On that note, sorry, I missed that. Did you say you buy both or just one of them?
Oh, I'd buy both for sure. But
Yeah.
I'm stupid, so I'm not the best reference, because the average person isn't buying both. But me, oh hell yeah, brother.
I'm all there.
Taking out a second mortgage. No.
I would definitely buy both.
Because if you did, let's say you do the handheld for $400 and you do a dock for $100, so you have that option for people who, you know, I think that's, I think that way you can get some realistic tech in there that can perform and not be a total headache.
I think presumably they just make it function with any of the docks already out there. Like you know, the Steam Deck has this whole ecosystem of third-party docks now. I noticed that, like, I bought a Steam Deck dock for my Steam Deck ages ago, and then I eventually got an Asus ROG Ally. The Steam Deck dock worked with that, and then I got a Lenovo Legion Go. The Steam Deck dock worked with that as well, and then I tried plugging my Switch into it when I was testing it out, and it worked with my Switch as well. I was really impressed. So
yeah, just that USB-C out video.
USB-C, baby. Like, someone,
it's easy.
Yeah, tell Apple about USB-C. I think they haven't heard of it yet. But anyways,
they could do some retro callback and do like a Xbox expansion boost when you use the dock. You get a little performance boost. It's like a GPU that you plug in that boosts the resolution or something.
Yeah. Or maybe it's got the port for the storage expansion cards. So I paid a lot of money for that expansion card. I wouldn't mind if it worked with the next Xbox.
Those better carry over. That's gonna be a little annoying if they invest in that time and that tech and got all the third-party licensing deals, and then they said, actually, no.
Actually, yeah, we don't need this. But anyways, I think that's gonna be the show. You know, thank you so much, Miles, for jumping on with me and doing this. Let the people know where they can find you and what games of yours they need to check out.
Yeah, dude, thanks for having me on. It's been a while since we've got to like sit and talk about games, and I get a lot of really sweet messages on social media from people who are like, "Man, I miss Xbox Chatter days. I miss having you on podcasts." And
got some in the chat right now.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, it really means a lot. I really appreciate that. You know, now that I'm in the dev space, I'm free to do podcasts, but I've been hesitant because I don't want people to clip what I say out of context and have it be a whole thing. So
I know that feel.
I do appreciate it. I do miss the podcast circuit, so I've been trying to make it a point to do some more guest spots and get out there and talk about games. I'm still on Twitter if you want to follow me. At Miles Dompier over there. I'm also on Threads. I know a lot of people are getting frustrated by the state of things over on Twitter, so you can find me there.
Threads is really good. I'm getting really good engagement on Threads, and I've got like 8,000 followers. It's really good. I really like it. Yeah.
I've been trying to get in the habit, because mostly it's habit. Like, we have that. I open up Twitter first.
Yeah.
I'm trying to like shift the habit a little bit here. If you want to check out Illfonic stuff, we actually have 2 of our games on sale in the ID at Xbox, like 60% off sale. Arcadegeddon, which I played that before I started at Illfonic, and like a lot of people are sleeping in that game because it's such a good, fun third-person shooter roguelike. It's got 4-player co-op, really good loop, really vibrant art style. I think it's $6 right now. It's dirt cheap. And then Ghostbuster Spirits Unleashed is also in there, and you can get that for I think $12 or $13. So we got those on Xbox. If you're only playing on Xbox, we have those 2. And obviously we have Killer Clowns from Outer Space, the game. Friday the 13th, the game. Due to the ongoing legal stuff that has been delisted, RIP. But Predator's coming soon, TM.
Soon, TM. Well, yeah, thank you so much, Miles. And thanks to everyone in the chat and everyone on Patreon. Obviously, this is airing exclusively first on Patreon if you're a listener there. So thanks for your support. And if you're on YouTube, thanks, for your support there as well. Even though it's a little bit later, you'll be getting this a few days after the fact. But yeah, patreon.com/XB2, or you can go to hang out with us at discord.gg/XB2. You can also grab 20% off at Manscaped with our checkout code XB2. I just used that this afternoon for some new formulas Very, very lovely stuff over at Manscaped, and we love them for supporting us as well. And yeah, thanks very much, Miles. And you know, if you want to get Miles' Twitter and social media handles, they're in the description in this video. And I will see you next time. Take care, everybody. Say goodbye, Miles.
Peace, everybody.
Okay, guys. Thank you so much.